Today's best love story is The Boy Who Cried Wolf, adapted by Laura Kalkman, illustrated by John Goodell. In a faraway land of green pastures and bright skies, there lived a little boy. The boy's name was Thomas. He was 9 years old. Thomas lived with his family in a village nestled in the foothills of a grand mountain. It was a lovely little village. Many of the people who lived in town were farmers. Some of them raised sheep. The sheep liked to roam and graze in the green pasture. All of the village children had chores to do. Thomas's job was to watch over the sheep. Each morning, Thomas led the sheep to pasture. "Come, come," he shouted to the big mother ewes. "Come, come," he shouted to the big father rams and the little baby lambs. One by one, the sheep followed Thomas to the pasture. Thomas spent his days alone with the sheep. He brought a ball to the pasture. Sometimes he would invent games to play by himself. He would kick the ball across the grass while chanting, "Kick the ball, then run and leap, but never touch a single sheep." Other times he would pass the time counting, 1, 2, 3. The sheep will follow me. Thomas could also count by twos. 2, 4, 6. I'll teach my sheep some tricks. He could even count by threes. 3, 6, 9. I'll bring them back on time. Thomas enjoyed watching the sheep, but he missed playing with people. Sometimes, when Thomas grew tired of his games, he would gaze off toward the village. "I wonder if anyone ever thinks about me out here," he thought. One day, Thomas felt lonely. He looked out at the sheep. He looked out at the faraway village. "I wish I had someone to play with," he said. He was tired of playing ball. He was tired of counting sheep. Tending sheep was not very exciting. Thomas thought about the dark forest nearby. "I'll bet the forest is exciting," he thought. Thinking about the forest made Thomas remember what his parents said about wolves. Wolves like to eat sheep, which is why Thomas had to watch out for them. Thomas had never seen a wolf. Thomas wondered what would happen if a wolf were to come to the pasture. A wolf would add some excitement. If there was a wolf, Thomas thought proudly, it would be my important job to call for help. Everyone would come running. I would save the sheep. I would be a hero. Thomas grew more and more excited about being a hero. He wished that a wolf would come. But no matter how hard Thomas wished, a wolf never emerged from the deep, dark forest. Finally, Thomas grew tired of waiting. "I could just pretend there is a wolf," he thought. Thomas thought it was an excellent idea. He began to shout, "Help! Help! Wolf! Wolf! There's a wolf in the pasture, and he sure looks hungry." The people in town heard Thomas's cry. They ran to the pasture. They ran to save Thomas and the sheep. Thomas smiled. His trick had worked. The villagers did not see a wolf. They only found a smiling boy. "Are you sure you saw a wolf, Thomas?" the villagers asked. Thomas tried not to laugh. I guess there was no wolf after all," Thomas said with a giggle. The villagers searched the pasture just in case. They searched behind trees. They searched behind bushes. When they didn't find a wolf, they were very relieved. Finally, all of the villagers returned to town. Thomas smiled happily. He enjoyed the excitement. The next day, Thomas led his sheep to the pasture. As usual, he played with his ball, then he watched the clouds, then he counted his sheep by ones, then by twos, then by threes. Again, the little boy grew bored. It was more fun when the villagers came, Thomas thought. Thomas looked out toward the deep, dark forest, took a big breath, and began to shout out toward the village. Help, help! Wolf, wolf! There's a wolf in the pasture, and he sure looks hungry. The people in town heard Thomas's cry. They ran to the pasture. They ran to save Thomas and the sheep. Thomas laughed. His trick had worked again. There is no wolf, Thomas said. This made the villagers angry. You must not lie, a farmer said. You must always tell the truth, or people will never believe you. Thomas was sorry. He learned his lesson. He promised not to lie again. The next day, Thomas again led his sheep to the pasture. While they grazed, he played with his ball. Later, he rested in the grass and gazed up at the clouds. When he started to grow bored, he counted sheep. Just then, Thomas heard a rustling sound. It was coming from the direction of the dark forest. He sat up and looked around. Suddenly, a large gray wolf emerged from the forest. The wolf trotted quickly toward two fleecy white lambs. Thomas noticed the wolf's bushy gray tail that swished back and forth. He noticed the wolf's pointy teeth that looked ready to bite. Thomas had never seen something so scary. He was so frightened he could barely move. At last, he jumped up and ran to the village. Help, help! Wolf, wolf, he cried. There's a wolf in the pasture and he looks hungry. This time, the villagers did not run to help. They did not believe him. The wolf stole the sheep. The villagers were glad that Thomas was not hurt, but they were upset about losing their sheep. Thomas felt sad too. He wanted excitement, but he did not want to lose his sheep. A liar will not be believed even when he tells the truth, one farmer reminded him. Thomas learned his lesson the hard way. The end.